uns mit einem Gebet. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this new morning. Please bless also our study which we will now have. And please help Brother Mark and also Sister Lucia with the translation. And help us that we would be strengthened by your word for the rest of the day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, if we go to the notes that I posted.
Gehen wir zu den Notizen, die ich hier postet habe.
I just want to look at some things. These repeating patterns, these fractals, are sometimes a little bit confusing.
Ich möchte mir jetzt ein paar Dinge anschauen und diese wiederholenden Muster und diese Fraktale, sie sind manchmal etwas verwirrend.
And I know they're right, but they're just sometimes for our human mind, we don't see things the way that the Lord wants us to see them.
Und ich weiß, dass sie richtig sind, aber für den menschlichen Verstand ist es manchmal schwierig, die Dinge so zu sehen, wie Gott sie sehen lassen möchte.
Okay, I just want to lay out some points this morning and something for us to think about.
Und ich möchte heute Morgen ein paar Punkte auslegen und darüber, wo wir darüber nachdenken sollen.
Okay, let's begin by going to Daniel chapter 5.
Und fangen wir an, indem wir zu Daniel 5 gehen.
In verse 1.
In Vers 1.
It says, Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. So, where are we prophetically?
Also wo befinden wir uns prophetisch?
Yeah. We've just been through this, right? Not a week ago. Right, so it's marking the beginning of the Sunday law, right?
Es markiert den Anfang des Sonntagsgesetzes.
It's marked there by the fact that they're having this feast, right?
Und es ist markiert durch die Tatsache, dass sie hier dieses Fest haben.
Verse 2.
Vers 2.
Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, so what's he doing?
Was hat er getan?
He's in the middle of drinking the wine now, right? And then it says, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines might drink therein. Right? So he makes a command. Right?
Also gibt jetzt einen Befehl.
So it doesn't really matter which one we use, but here we've got the Sunday law. So here is the feast, right? Drinking Babylonian wine. Right?
Also hier haben wir das Fest im Sonntagsgesetz und sie trinken den babylonischen Wein.
Tells us in Revelation 17, the woman made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Right?
Und es sagt uns in Offenbarung 17, dass die Frau alle von ihrem Wein ihrer Unzucht trinken lässt.
Okay, then we understand that it comes to this point where I'm just going to prevent confusion, just rub this out for the moment, right?
Ich will jetzt erstmal Verwirrung vermeiden und deswegen habe ich das weggewischt.
So here he makes a command, right?
Also hier macht er einen Befehl.
And we understand it's marking a point where the death decree is made, right?
Und wir verstehen, das markiert einen Punkt, wenn das Todesdekret erlassen wird.
Because he commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king, the princes, his wives, and his concubines might drink therein. And we looked at this, that the vessels represent God's people.
Also wir haben nochmal Vers 2 gelesen und wir haben uns das angeschaut, dass diese Gefäße Gottes Volk darstellen.
So that they're forcing upon God's people this wine, and it's marking this decree, this test that's going to come. Right?
Also sie zwingen jetzt Gottes Volk diesen Wein auf und das markiert eben diesen Test, dieses Dekret, was sie jetzt erlassen.
Okay. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank therein. So they make the command, they bring them, and they begin to put this wine in them, right?
Also Vers 3 haben wir gelesen, sie machten den Befehl, sie bringen die Gefäße und dann trinken sie jetzt aus ihnen.
It says they drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. And this marks the point when you do this, right? This is when the Lord's going to close probation on you.
Und in Vers 4, das markiert jetzt den Punkt, wenn man das tut, dann schließt der Herr die Gnadentür für dich.
Because it says, in the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, and the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. So fingers of a man's hand comes and writes on the wall, right, after they've been drinking and worshipping these gods.
Also nachdem sie jetzt diese Götter angebetet haben, kommt jetzt eben diese Menschenhand und schreibt mit dem Finger.
So we understand that, okay, that's 6. The finger of God comes here, marking that now his probation is closed, right?
Wir verstehen jetzt, dass der Finger Gottes dann hier kommt und das markiert den Punkt, wenn die Gnadenzeit jetzt geschlossen ist.
Verse 6.
Vers 6.
Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, Whosoever shall read this writing, and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. So when probation closes, they straightaway turn to these magicians, right?
Bis Vers 8. Wenn die Gnadentür jetzt schließt, dann gehen sie sofort zu diesen Magiern.
Okay, but they're not able to tell you, right?
Aber sie sind nicht in der Lage, es dir zu sagen.
And just to remind us, to go to Isaiah 19. I've
Hello.
not put it in the notes, but
Um uns zu erinnern, gehen wir nochmal in den Bibeln zu Jesaja 19.
and we see this very illustration,
Und da sehen wir genau diese Darstellung.
because great fear comes upon him there. His loins are loosed.
Weil große Furcht kommt da über ihn und seine Lenden werden gelöst.
Isaiah 19, verse 1.
Jesaja 19 und Vers 1.
It says, The burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, they shall fight every one against his brother, every one against his neighbour, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. So this is the shaking of the heavens and the earth when Christ comes on a cloud, right?
Also das ist die Erschütterung von Himmel und Erde, wenn Christus auf der Wolke kommt.
Verse 3.
Vers 3.
And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, to the charmers, to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards. So that's what Belshazzar did, right?
Also das hat Belshazzar getan.
So the finger writes on the wall, tell him you're done, right?
Also die Finger schreibt jetzt auf der Wand und sagt, es ist jetzt vorbei.
And that's what Daniel, all Daniel came in, stood before the king and said, your probation's closed, you're done, right?
Das hat auch Daniel gesagt, er ist vor dem König gekommen und hat gesagt, deine Gnadentür ist geschlossen, ist jetzt vorbei für dich.
Okay, so now go to Exodus chapter 8.
Geht jetzt zu 2. Mose 8.
And the chapter's about the plagues, right, in
Das
Egypt.
Kapitel handelt über die Plagen in Ägypten.
And we also know that the plagues in Egypt are representing the same time period,
Und
right?
wir wissen auch, dass die Plagen in Ägypten dieselbe Zeitspanne darstellen.
Right? Sunday law crisis.
Die Sonntagsgesetzkrise.
So verse 16.
Vers 16.
This is the third plague.
Und das hier ist die dritte Plage.
It says, And the Lord said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod, and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in man and in beast, and all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. What could they not do?
Was konnten sie nicht tun?
Okay, they couldn't counterfeit it, right?
Sie konnten es nicht fälschen.
And it's like just what we read in Daniel 5, right? That he brings in the magicians, astrologers. They are not able to tell him the vision, right?
Und das ist genau dasselbe, wie wir auch in Daniel 5 gelesen haben. Sie sind nicht in der Lage, ihm das zu sagen.
Look in verse 19.
Und in Vers 19.
Then the magician said to Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said, right? So what is it that the magicians recognize?
Also was erkennen die Magier?
No, that's what it says. We've just been looking at Daniel chapter 5. What do they recognize?
Also wir haben gerade Daniel 5 angeschaut und was erkennen sie dort?
It's the close of probation,
Das
right?
ist das Ende der Gnadenzeit.
Okay, now just let's confirm this, because go to 2 Timothy chapter 3.
Und lasst uns das bestätigen, indem wir zu 2. Timotheus 3 gehen,
in verse 8.
in Vers 8.
It says, Now as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, that's these magicians, right?
Und das sind diese Magier.
So do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith. But they shall proceed no further. Right? So it marks a point where they cannot go any further.
Also es markiert jetzt einen Punkt in Vers 9, wo sie nicht mehr weiter.
For their folly shall be what? Manifest.
Die
Right?
Torheit wird manifestiert werden.
So who do they represent?
Also wen stellen sie dar?
The foolish virgins that are manifested. Right?
Die törichten Jungfrauen, die manifestiert werden.
Okay, but if we come down, we take this, right? The same time period, right? And remember that we have 3 plagues, right? So you've got 1, 2. The third plague would have to be marking this point, right?
Also wenn wir das hier oben jetzt nehmen und hier ausstrecken, dann haben wir hier diese ersten 3 Plagen und die dritte Plage würde ja dann diesen Punkt markieren.
Right?
Richtig.
Because this is where the finger of God comes, right?
Weil hier kommt der Finger Gottes.
And it's just marking the exact same principle as that's here,
Und
right?
es markiert genau dasselbe Prinzip, wie es auch hier oben ist.
Right, have we seen that?
Kann das jeder sehen?
So, just right here. Finger of God. They're both showing the exact same thing.
Also der Finger Gottes. Und das zeigt genau, also beides genau dasselbe.
Okay. Now let's go to midnight in Millerite history.
Und
Right?
gehen wir jetzt zur Mitternacht in der Miller-Geschichte. Zum nächsten Zitat.
Okay. It says, this next quote from Great Controversy 398.
Das nächste Zitat von Großen Kampf 398.
It says, While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh. So what are they doing?
Also was tun sie?
They're sleeping, right?
Sie schlafen.
And then all of a sudden there's the cry, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him.
Und dann plötzlich kommt dieser Ruf, siehe, der Bräutigam kommt, geht aus ihm entgegen.
Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. In the summer of 1844, midway between the time when it had been first thought that the 2300 days would end and the autumn of the same year, to which it was afterward found that the extent that the message was proclaimed in the very words of Scripture, Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Right? So, when does this take place literally? What day does it take place?
So, an welchem Datum hat das buchstäblich stattgefunden?
Yeah, so I've even written it in the head.
Yes, that's right.
Okay then.
That's right. No.
Also
It's
steht
written
sogar
there,
in der Überschrift.
21st of July 1844, right?
Also der 21. Juli 1844.
It says it's midway,
Es
right?
sagt, es ist in der Mitte des Weges.
Okay, so, and what's important, it says it's in the summer, right?
Und das ist wichtig, es sagt hier, es ist im Sommer.
Now, just read these two verses I've put afterwards.
Und lest diese zwei Verse, die ich danach in die Notizen gestellt habe.
It says, He that
Sprüche
gathereth
10, Vers 5.
He that gathereth in summer is a wise son. So, who gathers in summer? Who is he?
Also der im Sommer sammelt, wer ist er?
He's a wise, right?
Er ist weise.
But he that sleepeth in harvest is a son that causeth shame. So, there's two classes. One resurrects to eternal life. The other one resurrects to everlasting shame,
Und
right?
es gibt ja zwei Klassen. Die einen, die stehen auf zum ewigen Leben und die anderen zum ewiger Schmach und Schande.
Okay. So, if you're gathering, it represents somebody who woke up and had oil in his lamp, right?
Also wenn du sammelst, dann stellt es eben jemand dar, der aufgewacht ist und Öl in seiner Lampe hat.
In summertime, right?
In der Sommerzeit.
Because the next verse, Jeremiah 8:20,
Und im nächsten Vers, Jeremia 8, Vers 20,
says, The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we are not saved. So what is summer?
also was ist der Sommer?
The harvest.
Die Ernte.
So if we go back to this quote, midway, right, which was midnight on the 21st of July, was harvest.
Also wenn wir zurückgehen zu dem Zitat, dann ist eben die Mitte, also was dann am 21. Juli war, das war die Ernte.
Right?
Richtig?
Okay, and I've got some real struggles with this because we know when you have this center waymark here, right?
Und ich hatte ein paar Probleme damit, weil wir wissen ja, wir haben hier diese mittlere Wegmarke.
Okay, but we know that there's a time of peace there and it's like two waymarks, right?
Aber wir wissen, dass wir dort eine Zeit des Friedens haben und eben zwei Wegmarken sind.
So when you take this and you bring it down here you have these 2 points, right?
Und wenn man eben das hier nimmt und dann ausspannt hier, dann hat man diese 2 Punkte.
Right?
Richtig.
Okay, because this is just a fractal of this whole thing, right? Which we'll confirm more in a moment.
Weil der Hof. Sorry, I didn't
No,
see where it went.
This, right, is just a fractal of the whole thing.
Also weil das hier ist ja nur ein Fraktal von dem Ganzen.
Right. So, therefore, I want to suggest that just like here, if we were to take this and put it in here, you would have a finger of God here, and you also have one here, right?
Also wenn wir diese Darstellung nehmen würden und hier reinsetzen würden, dann hätte man hier einen Finger Gottes, sowie auch hier der Finger Gottes.
Right. And there was also 2 points in Millerite history where the cry was given, right?
Und da gab es auch 2 Punkte in der Miller-Geschichte, wo der Ruf gegeben wurde.
But we know that the close of probation was at the shut door, right at the end, right?
Aber wir wissen, dass das Ende der Gnadenzeit an der geschlossenen Tür war. Das war genau am Ende.
Okay, so I want you to see that this midnight here that was prefigured by snow giving that cry is marking the close of probation for one class and the point where another class is going forward, right? That's just what it's prefiguring.
Also ich möchte, dass wir eben sehen, dass dieser Punkt, wo Samuel Snow den Mitternachtsruf hier gegeben hat, am 21. Juli, dass das vorausschattet, wenn für die eine Gruppe die Gnadenzeit zu Ende geht und the message goes
forward.
und die Botschaft geht dann vorwärts zu einer
So.
anderen.
And another group goes forward with the message.
Another group goes forward to give the message.
No, the group that has the oil will go forward.
also die Gruppe, die das Öl dann hat, sie wird vorwärts gehen.
Okay, so I just want to put here 21st of July, right? Because this is the seventh plague, which is the end, right?
Also hier ist der 21. Juli und das hier schattet die 7. Plage voraus.
Right? Because, and I don't know, because it's like it's a difference between this waymark and the 15th of August where the midnight cry began to go forward, because probation hadn't closed there, right? So it's like 15th of August is marking the beginning and 21st of July is marking the end. It's like, no, not the other way around. 15th of August would be here marking the beginning of this time. 21st of July would be the end of this time. That's the point I'm making.
Also es gibt eben einen Unterschied zwischen dem 21. Juli und dem 15. August, weil der 21. Juli würde dann das Ende von einer Zeit darstellen und der 15. August der Anfang von einer anderen Zeit.
So what I'm going to do, right? We're just playing around here, right? 15th of August.
Also ich schreibe jetzt hier einfach mal 15. August hin.
Okay, on the 15th of August, Samuel Sheffield Snow comes into the Exeter camp meeting and explains to them the midnight cry,
Und
right?
am 15. August da kam Samuel Snow zu dem Exeter Camp Meeting und er hat ihnen dann den Mitternachtsruf erklärt.
And the message begins to go forward.
Und die
Right?
Botschaft fing an vorwärts zu gehen.
But we know that we have this 10 days before October 22nd, right?
Und wir wissen, dass wir eben auch diese 10 Tage haben vor dem 22. Oktober.
Which they thought it was the close of probation,
Und
right?
sie haben gedacht, das ist das Ende der Gnadenzeit.
And I would suggest that this point is what would parallel this point,
Und ich
right?
würde vorschlagen, dass eben dieser Punkt mit diesem Punkt parallel ist.
So what we need another witness for a cry being given here at the point where you come face to face with death, right?
Deswegen, wir bräuchten also einen zweiten Zeugen, der dann hier zeigen würde, dass hier ein Ruf gegeben wird, wenn du mit dem Tod ins Angesicht blickst.
Okay, let's just quickly look at that. Just jump over the next quote a minute and go to Esther chapter 4.
Und überspringen wir jetzt erstmal das nächste Zitat und gehen zu Esther 4
Right, verse 1.
und Vers 1.
So it says, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. What's he doing and why?
Was tut er und warum?
Israel was the death decree.
Right, so the death decree's come and now what's he doing?
Also, das Todesdekret kommt und was tut er?
He's crying with a bitter cry.
Yes, he's making a cry, right? But it's what? Okay, let's read 2 and 3.
Lesen wir noch Vers 2 und 3.
And came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So what's he doing now?
Also was tut er jetzt?
The war that we have to do in the day of atonement.
Yeah, the work you have to do in the day of you realize that you're filthy, right?
Also das ist das Werk, was du am Versöhnungstag tun sollst. Du realisierst, dass du eben schmutzig bist.
And what do they do in this time period? They cry
Und was tun sie in dieser Zeitspanne?
day and night,
Sie
right?
rufen Tag und Nacht.
And they're crying day and night for deliverance,
Und sie
right?
rufen Tag und Nacht für Befreiung.
Okay, so when he's making this cry here, he realizes he's unclean. But this one here is marking a point where people are covered with the garment and are giving the message, right?
Also wenn er hier diesen Ruf gibt, dann realisiert er, dass er eben unrein ist. Aber dieser Punkt markiert, wenn sie mit dem Gewand bekleidet sind und jetzt diese Botschaft geben.
Okay, so you see the difference. This is marking the end of the experience where you're now giving the midnight cry message. This is marking the beginning of the experience where you realize you need to weep and sigh and cry for the Lord to deliver you, right?
Also deswegen können wir sehen, dass es hier eben das Ende dieser einen Erfahrung darstellt, wo du jetzt den Mitternachtsruf gibst. Und hier ist es der Anfang dieser Erfahrung, wo du
The sign cry for the Lord to deliver you.
wo du dann weinen und wehklagen sollst, damit der Herr dich befreit.
Okay,
That's a question, but historically, I mean, on August 15th, they went forward and gave a message.
it doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter. The point is, when you put it on there, the 10 days before is marking the close of probation, or not. Okay, so why are you making that argument?
No, I mean,
He's also given a message there, is he not?
Yes.
Okay, but so there's no.
no, it's just seemed that you said they didn't give a message then.
I didn't say that. I just said that they're marking a point where they realise they have a need and they have to cry for deliverance, right? So they're given a message there, but it's an internal message.
Also die Frage war, weil am 15. August, da haben sie den Mitternachtsruf mit großer Kraft gegeben und hier geben sie halt schon einen Ruf, aber es ist eher ein interner Ruf und man realisiert jetzt sein Bedürfnis und schreit eben nach Befreiung.
Go to the quote that we just passed over.
Gehen wir zurück zu dem Zitat.
He gave a cry to the Jews.
Just let's read this.
Also lesen wir das Zitat von Christi Gleichnisse 414.
It says, "The coming of the bridegroom was at midnight." Okay, when did Christ come? Or when did this mark? Should I say?
Also wann war das markiert?
When was the coming of the bridegroom at midnight?
Wann war das Kommen des Bräutigams an Mitternacht?
Yeah. Come on, guys. Why are we not knowing this history? This is Millerite history. He came on October 22nd,
Also
right?
das ist ja die Miller-Geschichte. Er kam am 22. Oktober.
So when does it say he came?
Also wann sagt es, wann kam er?
Midnight.
An Mitternacht.
It's marking the end,
Das
right?
markiert das Ende.
The darkest hour. So the coming of Christ will take place in the darkest period of this earth's history. The days of Noah and Lot picture the condition of the world just before the coming of the Son of Man. The scriptures pointing forward to this time declare that Satan will work with all power and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. When does he do that?
Wann tut er das, dass er mit aller Kraft wirkt?
No, that's what it said there, right? But when does he do that?
Wann tut er das?
On the prophetic narrative, when does he do it?
In der prophetischen Erzählung.
The sixth plague,
Also in
right?
der 6. Plage.
When you go to Revelation 16, the threefold union, it's marking these false prophets that deceive the very elect, right?
Also in Offenbarung 16, da sieht man die dreifältige Union und sie verführen die Auserwählten.
Okay, so we'll read it again. It says, the days of Noah and Lot pictured the condition of the world just before the coming of the Son of Man. The scriptures pointing forward to this time, the time just before the coming of the Son of Man.
Also diese Zeit, die gerade vor dem Kommen des Menschensohnes ist.
That Satan will work with all power and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. His working is plainly revealed by the rapidly increasing darkness. What sort of darkness?
Was für eine Art Dunkelheit?
It's increasing,
Das ist
right?
eine zunehmende Dunkelheit.
The multitudinous errors, heresies, and delusions of these last days. Not only is Satan leading the world captive, but his deceptions are leavening the professed churches of our Lord Jesus Christ. So, this is marking this time where Satan's delusions, right?
Also das markiert dann die Zeitspanne, wo Satan seine Täuschungen bringt.
And it's leading down to midnight, right?
Und das führt hinunter zu Mitternacht.
Because midnight, it says, is when Christ came.
Weil es sagt, um Mitternacht ist Christus gekommen.
The great apostasy will develop into darkness deep as midnight. So it's going to develop, it's increasing till when?
Also es wird sich entwickeln, es wird zunehmen bis wann?
Till midnight, right?
Bis Mitternacht,
When Christ comes.
wenn Christus kommt.
Where does he come?
Und wo kommt er?
Right here, right?
Genau hier,
The seventh plague.
an der 7. Plage.
So this is where you see the sign of the Son of Man, right? That's where he's first seen on the cloud.
Also
Right?
hier siehst du dann das Zeichen des Menschensohnes und das ist eben, wenn er gerade kommt.
So this is midnight, right?
Also das hier ist Mitternacht.
Confirming this point, right? Which is midnight.
Das bestätigt auch diesen Punkt, was Mitternacht ist.
Okay. It says to God's people, it will be a night of trial, right? A night of trial, a night of weeping, a night of persecution for the truth's sake. But out of that night of darkness, God's light will shine. And you get to this point, what happens?
Und wenn man zu diesem Punkt kommt, was geschieht?
On the prophetic narrative, what happens at this point?
In der prophetischen Erzählung.
He delivers you, right? Puts his righteous garment on you. You're now the light of the world,
Er
right?
befreit dich dort und zieht dir das gerechte Gewand an und du bist das Licht der Welt.
Okay. Go to the next quote.
Gehen wir zum nächsten Zitat.
It says, it is at midnight that God manifests his power for the deliverance of his people. So right here they're sighing and crying day and night for deliverance, right?
Also hier weinen sie Tag und Nacht für Befreiung.
And then he comes at midnight and delivers you, right?
Und dann kommt er an Mitternacht und befreit dich.
Okay. And just let's read the rest of it. It says, the sun appears shining in its strength, signs and wonders follow in quick succession. The wicked look with terror and amazement upon the scene, while the righteous behold with solemn joy the tokens of their deliverance. Everything in nature seems turned out of its course. The streams cease to flow, dark heavy clouds come up and clash against each other. In the midst of the angry heavens is one clear space of indescribable glory, whence comes the voice of God, like the sound of many waters, saying, it is done. Right? So there's this short pause when he says, look up, right? Till this heavens open and he claims it's finished. Right?
Also da ist eine kurze Pause dazwischen, wenn er sagt, schaut auf und dann the heavens.
Yeah, the heavens open.
Die Himmel sind geöffnet
Right.
und bis er dann sagt, es ist vollbracht.
Okay. So it is done at midnight is marking the close of probation. Right?
Und es ist geschehen an Mitternacht, das markiert das Ende der Gnadenzeit.
It's the end. Right?
Das ist eben das Ende.
Okay, so you see this in the next quote.
Und das können wir auch im nächsten Zitat sehen.
It says, it is in a crisis that character is revealed. What's the two great crises?
Und was sind diese zwei großen Krisen?
Okay, so and they both mark here this point. This is where Christ comes and Jerusalem begins to be destroyed.
Also
Right?
das ist eben die Wiederkunft und die Zerstörung Jerusalems. Das markiert hier diesen Punkt. Christus fängt an zu kommen und Jerusalem wird zerstört.
Okay, when the earnest voice proclaimed at midnight, behold the bridegroom cometh, go you to meet him. That's the same cry that was given there on the 21st of July.
Und das
Right?
ist derselbe Ruf, der auch am 21. Juli gegeben wurde.
Okay. And the sleeping virgins were roused from their slumbers. It was seen who had made preparation for the event. Both parties were taken unawares, but one was prepared for the emergency. Why were they prepared? What did they have on?
Und warum waren sie vorbereitet? Was hatten sie an?
Yeah, because Christ they've done the Isaiah thing. They've said, woe is me, I'm undone, and the Lord puts the garment on them, right?
Sie haben das gewandt, weil sie hatten diese Jesaja 6 Erfahrung, haben gesagt, wehe ist mir. Und Christus, er zieht ihnen jetzt das Gewand an.
And he presents you before his Father, right?
Und er präsentiert dich vor seinem Vater.
And the other was found without preparation. So now a sudden and unlooked for calamity, something that brings the soul face to face with death. So this face to face with death is when you're facing the executive judgment, right?
Also wenn du hier mit dem Tod ins Angesicht blickst, das ist, wenn du eben, wenn das ausführende Gericht stattfindet.
Will show whether there's any real faith in the promises of God. It will show whether the soul is sustained by grace. The great final test comes at the close of human probation when it will be too late for the soul's need to be supplied. Christ comes and he asks you questions, right? And it's done, right?
Also Christus kommt und er fragt dich diese Fragen und das ist jetzt geschehen.
Okay, so just in agreement with the quote we just read from Great Controversy.
Und das ist in Übereinstimmung mit dem Zitat, was wir gerade im großen Kampf gelesen haben.
That took us a long time to understand this correctly,
Und
right?
es hat sehr lange gebraucht, bis wir das richtig verstanden haben.
Okay, so in agreement with this, go to John chapter 4 and verse 6.
Und in Übereinstimmung damit gehen wir zu Johannes 4 und Vers 6.
It says, Now Jacob's well was there, Jesus therefore being wearied with his journey. What was he?
Was war er?
Wearied, right?
Er war ermüdet.
The Bible is full of, go to Psalm 68.
Geht zu Psalm 68.
Verse 8.
Psalm 68, Vers 8.
It says, The earth shook, the heavens also dropped at the presence of God. Where are we prophetically?
Wo sind wir prophetisch?
Okay, that's what it says. Where are we prophetically?
Also das ist die Erschütterung von Himmel und Erde und wo sind wir prophetisch?
Just go to the board. Deal with what we're dealing with. Right here, same point, right?
Also am Anfang der 7. Plage, das ist derselbe Punkt.
This is the shaking of the heavens and the earth, right?
Das ist jeweils die Erschütterung des Himmels und der Erde.
The earth shook, the heavens also dropped at the presence of God. Even Sinai itself was moved at the presence of God, the God of Israel. Thou, O God, didst send a plentiful rain, whereby thou didst confirm thine inheritance when it was weary. Right? And we know that the angel of Revelation 18 pours out at the 7th plague. Right?
Also dieser Regen kommt, wenn sie müde waren, und das ist eben auch hier an der 7. Plage, da gießt der Engel aus Offenbarung 18 aus.
Müde is weary?
Ja. Ermattet? Okay.
Yes.
Also wenn sie ermattet waren.
Okay. So it's like you're worn down in your journey, right?
Also du bist eben von deiner Reise ermattet.
So go back to John 4:6.
Gehen wir zurück zu Johannes 4, Vers 6.
Now Jacob's well was there, Jesus therefore being what? Wearied. So what's he going to receive?
Also Jesus war ermattet und was wird er jetzt erhalten?
A lot of rain, right?
Spätregen.
With his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour, midnight, right?
Das war die 6. Stunde, Mitternacht.
There, and now it marks the point, there cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus said unto her, Give me to drink. Jump down to verse 14.
Jetzt haben wir Vers 7 gelesen und gehen jetzt zu Vers 14.
But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. So what is Christ now representing?
Also was stellt Christus jetzt dar?
What does he represent?
Was stellt er dar?
Okay, he represents a well of water,
Also er stellt jetzt einen Brunnen des Wassers dar.
right? So he's standing next to this literal well and he's showing the contrast, right?
Also er steht jetzt neben dem buchstäblichen Brunnen und er zeigt jetzt den Kontrast.
So the woman comes up to the literal well and takes the water, but he's trying to point her to him, right?
Also die Frau kommt zu diesem buchstäblichen Brunnen und will Wasser schöpfen, aber er weist sie auf ihn hin.
That he has been filled with a lot of rain. He has the well of he's a well of everlasting life, and it's this water that you need, right?
Und dass er eben gefüllt ist mit dem Spätregen und dass er diese Brunnen des lebendigen Wassers ist und das ist, was sie eben braucht.
Okay, and this is what Samuel Sheffield Snow was doing on the 21st of July,
Und
right?
das hat auch Samuel Snow am 21. Juli getan.
Midnight, right?
An Mitternacht.
Okay. So go now to Daniel chapter 8.
Gehen wir jetzt zu Daniel 8.
And I just want to, because this is the First World War, Second World War, right?
Das ist der Erste Weltkrieg und das ist der Zweite Weltkrieg.
If we was to make this let's just put this up of it, Sunday law to the final review, right?
Wenn das hier eben 2 Sonntagsgesetze sind.
Okay, so just the same here, right? Okay, so okay, the point was making is that we know that at the end of the First World War they made a league.
Also wir wissen, am Ende des Ersten Weltkrieges, da haben sie ein Bündnis gemacht.
And there was a little time of peace,
Und da
right?
gab es eine kleine Zeit des Friedens.
And we also know that this is the 1260,
Wir wissen auch, dass das hier die 1260 ist.
and at the end of the 1260, the woman is forgotten, right?
Und am Ende der 1260 ist die Frau vergessen.
For how long?
Und für wie lange?
70 years.
Für 70
And then
Jahre.
she's going to sing like a harlot with all the kings of the earth, right?
Und dann wird sie wieder wie eine Hure singen mit allen Königen der Erde.
She's going to feed them with her wine, right?
Wird sie dann mit ihrem Wein füttern.
So we've got 2 witnesses here for this time of peace, right?
Und deswegen haben wir hier 2 Zeugen für diese Zeit des Friedens.
Okay, so I just want to remind us of the time of peace here,
Ich
right?
möchte uns jetzt an die Zeit des Friedens hier erinnern.
Okay, Daniel 8,
Gehen wir zu Daniel 8,
verse 8.
Vers 8.
Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. Okay? So in Daniel chapter 8, you have, it goes from Medo-Persia all the way down to Rome, right?
Also in Daniel 8, da geht es von Medo-Persien bis nach Rom.
But in the middle of that, you have this great horn being broken, right?
Aber in der Mitte davon, da wird dieses große Horn gebrochen.
Which we understand, I mean, we haven't got the smaller fractal here, but nonetheless, we understand it's going to take place in this time period, right?
Wir verstehen, dass das eben hier in dieser Zeitspanne stattfinden wird.
Okay, it says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. And, okay, so just let's put that in place. We know that that would be here, right?
Also Vers 8, da wissen wir, dass das hier dann wäre.
And what do these 4 horns represent?
Und was haben diese 4 Hörner dargestellt?
It represents the worldwide nations, right?
Also er stellt die weltweiten Nationen dar.
Okay, so we have it marked there. Now, how do we know it's marking a time of peace?
Und woher wissen wir, dass es eine Zeit des Friedens markiert?
Next verse.
Nächster Vers.
And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great towards the south, toward the east, towards a pleasant land. So when that little horn, right, comes forth, how does it come up?
Und wenn dieses kleine Horn aufkommt, wie kommt es auf?
Right, it begins as a lamb, right?
Und es fängt an wie ein Lamm.
Okay. So we see that it has the very same characteristics as when the United States rises up, right?
Und wir können sehen, dass es dieselben Charaktermerkmale hat, wie auch wenn die USA aufkommt.
Because at the end of the 1260, the earth beast comes up, and it comes up like a lamb,
Weil
right?
am Ende der 1260, da kommt dieses Tier aus der Erde herauf und es kommt eben wie ein Lamm.
It's the same principles with pagan Rome. When it arose, it came up like a lamb, right?
Dasselbe Prinzip ist auch mit dem heidnischen Rom, als es aufstieg, da kam es wie ein Lamm.
Now go to Daniel 11,
Gehen wir zu Daniel 11,
speaking about Rome, verse 24.
und Vers 24, das spricht über Rom.
It says, he shall enter peaceably even upon the farthest places of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey and spoil and riches. Yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Right?
Also für eine Zeit.
So it says he shall enter peaceably. Right?
Und es sagt, er wird eben friedlich aufkommen.
But then it says he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. This is marking the 360 years from the time they come in contact with God's people to the time that they fall.
Also diese Zeit hier markiert diese 360 Jahre von dem Punkt, wo sie mit Gottes Volk in Verbindung kommen, bis zu der Zeit, wo sie fallen.
Battle of Actius to
Yeah, the Battle of Actium to the fall.
Von dem Kampf von Actium bis zu ihrem Fall.
that was not the time when they came in contact. It was already early.
They're not in contact with God's people then?
No, they were, but it was already with a leak. This was when they came in contact. 150.
Doesn't matter. Go to verse 27.
War schon vorher, wenn sie mit Gottes
We're not
Volk.
applying these things chronologically, right? So
Aber wir wollen diese Dinge nicht chronologisch anwenden. Gehen wir zu Vers
verse
27.
27, right? And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, but it shall not prosper. For yet the end shall be at the what? Time appointed.
An der bestimmten Zeit.
So where's the time appointed?
Wo ist die bestimmte Zeit?
No, let's not deal with other symbols. The time appointed, where would it be in relation to what we're talking about?
Wann wäre die
Okay,
bestimmte
midnight,
Zeit?
right?
An Mitternacht.
So this is the time appointed, right?
Das ist die bestimmte Zeit.
So it says that they're going to, he shall forecast his devices against the strong, even for a time, right?
Das ist Vers 24.
It's marking now where they're like this dictatorship ruling,
Das
right?
markiert jetzt, wenn sie eben wenn sie in dieser Diktatur herrschen.
So I just want to, all I'm doing is you take the 1260, this 360, and you would parallel it with the 1260.
Und deswegen diese 360 können wir parallel setzen mit der 1260.
Right, when does the 1260 end?
Und wann endet die 1260?
At the time appointed,
An
right?
der bestimmten Zeit.
Just showing you the same thing, right?
Das zeigt uns genau dasselbe.
Okay, so, yes, okay, so, I wouldn't put it there, 1 second, take that off of there. Would be here, right?
Also das wäre hier unten, die 360.
If I understand that rightly.
Wenn
Okay.
wir das richtig verstehen.
Because this is Daniel 8. Daniel 8 begins with Medo-Persia, the Sunday law, the two-horned power. Then the horn gets brought down, takes over, then gets brought down. You have this, and now you have Rome, right?
Also weil Daniel 8, das fängt ja eben mit Medo-Persien an, diese zweihörnige Macht, die dann am Sonntagsgesetz kommt und dann nimmt dieses große Horn die Herrschaft und wird zu Fall gebracht, die 4 Hörner kommen auf und dann kommt eben Rom.
Okay. So, go now to the next quote.
Gehen wir jetzt zum nächsten Zitat.
Now, I'm totally open in all of this, right? We need to really verify these things, but I'm just putting some thoughts in place.
Also ich bin offen für diese Dinge, aber wir müssen das noch bestätigen, aber ich setze nur ein paar Sachen an den Platz.
All I'm doing is I'm taking all the points that we know and establish what they are, and we're trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle together. Right?
So alles, was ich tue, ist eben die Dinge, die wir schon verstehen, auf die also alles zusammenbringen und markieren.
Okay, next quote.
Nächstes Zitat.
It says, the midnight cry was not so much carried by argument, though the scripture proof was clear and conclusive. There went with it an impelling power that moved the soul. there was no doubt, no questioning upon the occasion of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem. What sort of ride was Christ doing here?
Also was für einen Ritt hat Christus hier getan?
Okay, that's what yes, it's a triumphal ride, but what does it mean?
Das ist ein triumphaler Ritt und was bedeutet das?
No, Scott. It's in the word. Triumphal ride. What does it mean?
Das ist ein Wort.
Okay, you've overcome. What have you overcome?
Du hast überwunden und was hast du überwunden?
Right, so where are you struggling with the what, sorry? Okay, here. So you're struggling for deliverance from sin, right?
Also du hast hier die Knechtschaft der Sünde überwunden und hier kämpfst du ja noch mit der Sünde.
Right, and it's so much difficult in these smaller fractals, right? Okay, because the point, okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it goes all the way simply. Okay, so it would be here, right, where you get delivered, right?
Also das wäre ja dann hier, wenn du befreit bist.
Okay, so here's where you've triumphed, right?
Und hier hast du überwunden.
So where's the triumphal entry beginning?
Also wo fängt der triumphale Einzug an?
Come on, it's just a confirmatory question. If the triumphal entry is where you've overcome your sin, where is the triumphal entry beginning?
Also wenn der triumphale Einzug ist,
Already give you the answer.
wenn der triumphale Einzug stattfindet, wenn du deine Sünde überwunden hast, wo fängt der triumphale Einzug an?
Okay, can't begin before that point, right?
Also an diesem Punkt, das kann also nicht vor dem Punkt stattfinden.
You can't be having the triumphal entry when you've not triumphed.
Du kannst
Right?
nicht den triumphalen Einzug haben, wenn du nicht triumphiert hast.
Okay, in Genesis 41, when did Joseph get put in the chariot?
Und in 1. Mose 41, wann wurde Josef in den Streitwagen gesetzt?
Okay, in Genesis 41, what was given him when he was put in this chariot?
Also was wurde ihm in 1. Mose 41
Let's go
gegeben,
there.
als er in den Streitwagen ging?
The garment, right?
Gehen wir zu 1. Mose
Just
41.
let's quickly read it.
Das war ihm das Gewand.
Verse 42.
Vers 42.
And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bow the knee, and made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. Right? So the triumphal entry is marking the point where you've triumphed. Right?
Also bis Vers 43. Der triumphale Einzug markiert also den Punkt, wenn du triumphiert hast.
Okay? And this was marking the point where Joseph stands and tells the king what's about to happen.
Und
Right?
das markiert auch den Punkt, wenn Josef jetzt vor dem König steht und er sagt ihm jetzt, was dabei ist zu geschehen.
So therefore, the triumphal entry is parallel with midnight here, right?
Deswegen ist der triumphale Einzug mit Mitternacht parallel.
Okay, now let's read on the quote.
Lesen wir weiter im Zitat.
It says, upon the occasion of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem, the people who were assembled from all parts of the land to keep the feast flocked to the Mount of Olives as they had joined the throng that were escorting Jesus. They caught the inspiration of the hour and helped to swell the shout. Who was leading that triumphal entry?
Wer hat diesen triumphalen Einzug geleitet?
Yeah, Lazarus, right?
Das war Lazarus.
Where had Lazarus come out of?
Und wo ist Lazarus herausgekommen?
He come out of the grave,
Er
right?
ist aus dem Grab gekommen.
So it can't be at this point where you're crying day and night,
Also
right?
es kann nicht an diesem Punkt sein, wenn du Tag und Nacht rufst.
It has to mark the point where you've overcome, right?
Es muss den Punkt markieren, wenn du überwunden hast.
It says, they joined the throng that was escorting Jesus and caught the inspiration of the hour and helped to swell the shout. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. In like manner did unbelievers who flocked to the Adventist meetings some from curiosity, some merely to ridicule, feel the convincing power attending the message, behold the bridegroom cometh. And Snow was holding meetings right here at the Boston Tabernacle when he gave the message, behold the bridegroom cometh, right?
Snow hat hier diese Treffen abgehalten bei dem Exeter.
No. Boston Tabernacle.
Bei dem Boston, bei dieser, wie sagt das nochmal, Zelt, von dem Boston-Zelt.
No, it's not a tent. It was a building. It was just a church he was in.
Tabernakel.
Okay, bei dem Boston Tabernakel. Und er hat eben diese Botschaft mit Kraft gegeben.
Okay. So we have to rightly correlate these points, right, and understand. It's been difficult to understand this history correctly.
Wir müssen diese Dinge richtig in Bezug setzen und das ist manchmal schwer, diese Geschichte zu verstehen.
Okay. Now go to Matthew 24.
Geht jetzt zu Matthäus 24.
We don't have to spend too much time on this. Verse 15.
Vers 15.
It says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, marking the Sunday law, right?
Das markiert das Sonntagsgesetz.
In one sense.
In einem Sinne.
And in verse verse 16 it says, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So when the Sunday law comes, you got to flee, right?
Also in Vers 16, wenn das Sonntagsgesetz kommt, dann musst du fliehen.
But it says, verse 20,
Und in Vers 20 sagt es,
but pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Okay, so now's a time where you cannot flee, right?
und jetzt ist eine Zeit, wo du nicht fliehen kannst.
For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So it's marking, right, this change where this little 1260 begins, right?
Und das markiert jetzt diesen Wechsel, wo die kleine 1260 anfängt. Wo die
Okay.
Glocke kommt.
Okay, I'm in the wrong fractal. So it's the same, but we will come to that one. Okay, so it would be here.
Also die große Trübsal, die 1260, wäre dann im oberen Fraktal.
Right? Happy now? Okay, thanks for keeping me right on that. Right. So, then it says in verse 22,
Und in Vers 22 sagt es,
and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened, right? And that marks this point here where it's shortened, where he delivers them, right?
und das markiert dann diesen Punkt hier, wo er es jetzt abkürzt und wo er sie befreit.
Now go to verse 29.
Gehen wir zu Vers 29.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days, where he delivers you, right,
Also sofort nach der Trübsal jener Tage, wo er dich befreit,
shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give a light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. So it brings you to the seventh plague,
und
right?
das würde uns zur 7. Plage bringen.
And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. That's, you see him coming on the cloud, right?
Und Vers 30, das ist, wenn du ihn auf der Wolke kommen siehst.
Verse 31.
Vers 31.
And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. Now, who's the angels that he's sending?
Und wer sind die Engel, die er sendet?
No. Try to use prophetic language here. Who are the angels? It tells us in the Bible.
Also was sagt es in der Bibel? Wer sind die Engel?
The what's it?
The Reaper?
The reapers,
Die Schnitter.
right? Says this, that the angels are the reapers,
Es
right?
sagt, dass die Engel die Schnitter sind.
And we'll come back now to Christ at midnight when he's speaking to the Samaritan woman. What does he say about the reapers?
Und Christus, wo er dann an Mitternacht zu der samaritischen Frau geht und spricht, was sagt er dann über die Schnitter?
Come on, I've made this point several times. Who are the reapers?
Wer sind die Schnitter?
He tells, go to John 4.
Geht zu Johannes 4.
verse 35.
Und Vers 35.
He's now speaking to his disciples.
Spricht jetzt zu seinen Jüngern.
It says, Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. And he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gathereth fruit unto life eternal, and that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth. I sent you to reap that whereon ye bestowed no labour. Who are the reapers?
Bis Vers 38. Wer sind die Schnitter?
Those that he now sends to reap. Right?
Diejenigen, die er jetzt zum Ernten sendet.
Okay, and it tells you right here, it's at this point that he's going to come on the cloud and send his reapers.
Und er sagt uns, dass es dann an diesem Punkt ist, wenn er auf der Wolke kommt und die Schnitter jetzt aussendet.
Right?
Richtig.
Christ is standing there at midnight speaking to the Samaritan woman. Then the disciples come and he says, I send you to reap, speaking about the Samaritan woman. Right?
Und Christus steht ja an Mitternacht und spricht zur samaritischen Frau und dann sagt er zu seinen Jüngern, ich sende euch zu ernten. Und er spricht dann über die samaritische Frau.
Okay, so go to Revelation 11,
Und gehen wir zur Offenbarung 11,
verse 1.
Vers 1.
Maybe we'll leave that for now because that's a bit going to take too much time. Just jump over that. Go to the next quote from Great Controversy.
Überspringen wir jetzt doch Offenbarung 11 und gehen zum nächsten Zitat aus dem großen Kampf.
I'll come back to Revelation 11 probably tomorrow.
Ich glaube, morgen werde ich dann zurück zur Offenbarung 11 kommen.
It says, France, by a solemn and public ceremony, was to commit herself fully to the destruction of Protestantism. So what would this mark prophetically for us?
Also was würde das prophetisch für uns markieren?
The destruction of those that are protesting, right?
Das Todesdekret, also die Zerstörung derjenigen, die protestieren.
Are we protesting right now?
Und protestieren wir gerade?
What are we protesting?
Was protestieren wir?
We don't want to take the vaccination, right?
Wir wollen die Impfung nicht nehmen.
Okay, so it would mark this point where they're going to get rid of these protesters,
Und
right?
das markiert den Punkt, wenn sie jetzt diese Protestanten, die Protestierenden loswerden wollen.
The priest demanded that the affront offered to high heaven and the condemnation of the mass be expiated in blood, and that the king, in behalf of his people, publicly give his sanction to the dreadful work. The 21st of January, 1535. Which day?
An welchen Tag?
The 21st, right?
Am 21.
We years ago, we used to bring all these 21st together, right?
Und vor Jahren haben wir mal all diese 21 zusammengebracht.
And you'll see this more, because here was the 21st of July, right?
Und ihr werdet das gleich sehen, weil hier war der 21. Juli.
Okay, and it's marking the point here where they're delivered of this death decree or whatever, right?
Also es markiert dann hier den Punkt, wenn sie befreit sind von diesem Todesdekret.
Okay, but I just want you to see that the 21st somehow is marking. Let's read it.
It's, midnight and midday on a day are synonymous with each other. And a day for a year, the 21st of January would be midnight and the 21st of July would be midday, or the other way around. If you're comparing a day with a year, midnight and midday are the same. So 21st of January and 21st of July would be the same. Follow my thought?
Yes, but I'm not sure that that's got some relevance here. But maybe. But just let's read. So the 21st of January 1535 is marking the day of the death decree, right?
Also der 21. Januar 1535 markiert den Tag des Todesdekrets.
That would be here, right?
Das wäre dann hier.
21st of January 1535.
Also der 21. Januar 1335.
Okay, and I want to show us that it's correlated with midnight, because this is 15th of August where the midnight cry began to be given, right?
Und ich möchte eben zeigen, wie das in Bezug ist auf Mitternacht, weil das war ja am 15. August, wo der Mitternachtsruf gegeben wurde.
This is the midnight cry where you're now delivered,
Und
right?
das hier ist der Mitternachtsruf, wenn du befreit wirst.
Okay, but in history they're both marking a point where the midnight cry has been given, right?
Aber in der Geschichte, da markieren die beiden einen Punkt, wenn der Mitternachtsruf gegeben
Okay.
wird.
The 21st of January
1535 war das.
Okay. So, the 21st of January 1535 was fixed upon for the awful ceremonial. The superstitious fears and bigoted hatred of the whole nation had been roused. Paris was thronged with the multitudes that from all the surrounding country crowded her streets. The day was to be ushered in by a vast and imposing procession. The houses along the line of march were hung with mourning drapery, and altars rose at intervals. Before every door was a lighted torch in honour of the Holy Sacrament. Before daybreak, the procession formed at the palace of the king. First came the banners and crosses of the several parishes. Next appeared the citizens walking two and two and bearing torches. What are they walking?
Was, also wie gehen sie?
Yeah, it's like
Zwei und zwei.
this false procession, right? It says.
Das ist wie diese falsche Prozession.
The four orders of friars followed, each in its own peculiar dress. Then came a vast collection of famous relics. Following these rode the lordly ecclesiastics in their purple and scarlet robes and jewelled adornings, a gorgeous and glittering array. It's like a false triumphal entry in some way, right?
Es ist in gewisser Weise wie ein falscher triumphaler Einzug.
Okay, it's a false procession for sure, right?
Also es ist auf jeden Fall eine falsche Prozession.
Okay, just go to the next quote.
Gehen wir zum nächsten Zitat.
It says, the gospel of peace, which France had rejected, was to be only too surely rooted out, and terrible would be the results. On the 21st of January 1793, 258 years from the very day that fully committed France to the persecution of the reformers, another procession with far different purpose passed through the streets of Paris. Again the king was the chief figure, again there were tumult and shouting, again there were heard the cry for more victims. Okay, actually I put that in the wrong place. I thought about that. Right, so let's take that off of there.
Also ich habe das jetzt an den falschen Platz gesetzt.
I want to show that it's marking the end.
Also ich möchte zeigen, dass das das Ende markiert.
January. And now it's also marking the 21st of January 1793, right?
Also hier ist der 21. Januar 1535 und auch der 21. Januar 1793.
Okay, it was exactly, can't remember exactly how many years it was later, but it says 258 years from the very day, right? It's marking the French Revolution, where they come to put the king to death, right?
Es sagt, dass es genau 250 Jahre, 258 Jahre ja, von dem Tag ist, wo jetzt die französische Revolution stattfindet, and the king.
We're going to come to put him to death.
Und sie wollen jetzt den König umbringen.
Okay, right, so we know that in the literal seventh plague, nobody dies, right?
Und wir wissen, in der buchstäblichen 7. Plage stirbt niemand.
But in this time here, what's happening?
Aber in dieser Zeit hier, was geschieht?
It's where all the martyrs are going to be made,
Da
right?
werden all diese Märtyrer sterben.
The Mount of Transfiguration, you've got Moses and Elijah,
Auf
right?
dem Berg der Verklärung, da hat man ja auch Mose und Elia.
Moses represents those that die, Elijah represents those that don't die, right?
Mose stellt diejenigen dar, die sterben, und Elia diejenigen, die nicht sterben.
Okay. So we know there's going to be many martyrs in this time period, right?
Also wir wissen, dass es dann viele Märtyrer in dieser Zeitspanne gibt.
And just go to the next quote and we'll confirm this.
Gehen wir zum nächsten Zitat, um das zu bestätigen.
It says, but blackest in the black catalogue of crime, most horrible among the fiendish deeds of all the dreadful centuries was the St. Bartholomew's massacre. The world still recalls with shuddering horror the scenes of that most cowardly and cruel onslaught. The King of France, urged on by Romish priests and prelates, lent his sanction to the dreadful work. A bell tolling at dead of night was a signal for the slaughter. When did they come?
Wann sind sie gekommen?
At midnight, and we looked at this before, right?
Also an Mitternacht, und das haben wir uns auch schon mal angeschaut.
Protestants by thousands sleeping. What were they doing?
Was haben sie getan?
Sleeping,
Sie haben
right?
geschlafen.
Quietly in their homes, trusting to the plighted honour of their king, were dragged forth without warning, right? Comes suddenly and unexpectedly, right?
Also ohne Warnung, und das kommt eben plötzlich und unerwartet.
And murdered in cold blood. As Christ was the invisible leader of his people from the Egyptian bondage, so was Satan the unseen leader of his subjects in this horrible work. Right? So it takes you back to Egypt there when Christ comes to deliver his people.
Also es bringt uns zurück zu Ägypten, wo Christus kommt, um sein Volk zu befreien.
What did Satan do at that time?
Und was hat Satan zu dieser Zeit getan?
He was murdering all those, the firstborn, right?
Er hat all die Erstgeborenen umgebracht.
Okay, so for 7 days the massacre was continued in Paris, the first 3 with inconceivable fury, and it was not confined to the city itself, but by special order the king was extended to all the provinces and towns where Protestants were found. Neither age nor sex was respected. Pay attention to this point. Neither age nor sex was respected. Neither the innocent babe nor the man of grey hairs was spared. What is this?
Was ist das?
Okay, it's a false, it's a counterfeit, right?
Es ist eine Fälschung, eine Fälschung von Hesekiel 9.
So Satan in this, we haven't got the little box that's here, but Satan in here, prior to the Lord sending forth the men with the slaughter weapons, he comes and he begins to slay people falsely.
Also
right?
bevor der Herr diese Männer mit den Schlachterwaffen aussendet, da kommt jetzt Satan vor dieser Zeit und bringt Leute falscherweise um.
Okay, and he does the work that the true men will do at the appointed time, right?
Und er tut das Werk, was die wahren Leute dann tun werden zur bestimmten Zeit.
It says, noble and peasant, old and young, mother and child were cut down together. Throughout France, the butchery continued for 2 months. 70,000 of the very flower of the nation perished. So Satan is counterfeiting the work of judgment that will come after it, right?
Also Satan fälscht jetzt das Werk des Gerichts, was nachher kommen wird.
So, next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
The same master spirit that urged on the St. Bartholomew massacre led also in the scenes of the revolution. So what's it tying together?
Also was verbindet es zusammen?
It's tying it together with 21st of January 1793,
Es
right?
verbindet jetzt das Massaker zusammen mit dem 21. Januar 1793.
Okay, so, and the reason I want to put these in place because they'll help us when we come back to Revelation 11, right?
Der Grund ist, warum ich das jetzt an Platz setze, ist, weil es uns helfen wird, wenn wir zurück zur Offenbarung 11 kommen.
So, St. Okay, so these are just some thoughts. You need to go through and check them for yourself.
Das sind nur ein paar Gedanken und ihr müsst dahin durchgehen und für euch selbst sicherstellen.
Okay, but there's definitely 2 different points being marked in relation to the midnight cry. One's marking the beginning, one's marking the end. We need to understand this.
Aber es gibt auf jeden Fall 2 verschiedene Punkte, die den Mitternachtsruf markieren, und eines ist am Ende und eines am Anfang, und das müssen wir verstehen.
Okay. because this was really eating away at my mind for some time to try and correlate these points.
Und das war halt wirklich schwer für meinen Verstand, diese ganzen Punkte in den richtigen Bezug zu setzen.
So the triumphal entry is paralleling the point where you've overcome, right?
Und der triumphale Einzug, der ist parallel zu dem Punkt, wenn du überwunden hast.
But where Mordecai gives the cry, it's marking the beginning of the point where you need to overcome.
Aber wenn Mordecai den Ruf gibt, dann markiert es den Anfang von diesem Ruf, wo du noch überwinden musst.
Right?
Richtig.
Okay, I'm sure there's still lots of things that we have to see in here. Right?
Und ich bin mir sicher, da gibt es noch viele Punkte, die wir hier sehen müssen.
Okay, shall we close with prayer?
Sollen wir mit Gebet abschließen?
Father, thank you that you are opening all these scriptures for us.
Lieber himmlischer Vater, danke, dass du uns all diese Schriften für uns öffnest.
I pray that you will help us to follow this thought,
Und ich bete, dass du uns hilfst, diesen Gedanken zu folgen.
and I pray also for this day that you will help us to work out every task you have prepared for us.
Und ich bete auch für diesen Tag, dass du uns hilfst, jede Aufgabe, die du für uns vorbereitet hast, durchzuarbeiten.
And I pray that you will bless us in this day in Jesus' name.
Und ich bete, dass du uns an diesem Tag segnen mögest. In Jesu Namen. Amen.